fungi, lichen, and moss. Honestly, all of these are so interesting you could give each a separate video. However, I'll leave the longer videos to a qualified botanist. But before I start, I just wanted to say thanks for the support I got on my previous plant video. I've always thought nature was a niche subject, so I was pleasantly surprised to see so many people interested in the matter. I'm always happy to see people enjoying a video topic I'm passionate about, so thank you for that. Now, I can name most flowers, animals and trees in my area. However, other than a few common names, I've never done a deep dive on fungi. So I'm hoping to amend that with this video, by broadening my own knowledge and sharing my findings, and later on using that knowledge to design a few fantasy plants for my own world and story. I think the best starting point is to go outside into a garden or forest after some rain. I went through my old camera roll and found some of my first pictures I ever took of mushrooms I found growing in my garden. And from shape to color, they are just absolutely fascinating. They are very otherworldly, which intrigues my concept artist side. When spotting mushrooms, I'd recommend not touching them, firstly because some of them are poisonous, but mostly they are quite fragile and will break easily. Coming from a dry country, I've always loved lush, small valleys covered in moss and ferns. The comforting thought that these delicate, shade-loving plants can survive in such a harsh climate is calming and hopeful. And that adaptability to harsh conditions brings me to the amazing features of lichen. Lichen are the partnership of algae and fungi living and working together in a symbiotic relationship. They don't have roots and instead get all their nutrients directly from the surrounding atmosphere. This allows them to grow on almost any surface. However, because they depend so heavily on air quality, it makes them susceptible to pollution. This really shows because they are drought and frost resistant and are able to thrive in Arctic tundra to the driest deserts in the world. Yet, I don't see much lichen in city CBDs or busy intersections. So, if your town has plenty of lichen, rest assured the air quality is better than most. As for lifespan, like most simple structure organisms, they can live for thousands of years, and some have even been known to live for over 8,000 years, which is incredible. Imagine having a house plant that has been passed down through 320 generations. Oh, that plant over there? Yeah, that was my great recurring grandparents' plant. They also have a rich history used for medical antibiotics properties, food, dye, all the way to perfumes. I've never really noticed a scent to lichen, but apparently the perfumes are quite subtle. They have a musky note similar to that of oak or pinewood perfumes. For my area, I mainly have rock shield lichen, ruffle lichen, and sunburst lichens, but I'm sure for those living in wetter and cooler climates, there must be a plethora of species out there. On to mushrooms. The family of fungi encapsulates a wide range of species. This vast family tree has led to some truly incredible evolutionary traits. Similar to lichen, they can be robust and resistant to droughts and adapt into high salt concentrations, as well as being able to handle radiation and UV light, which allows them to be grown in space, which is pretty cool. But what has got to be my favorite trait is bioluminescent fungi, such as the bitter oyster or the green pepper. They use the faint light to attract insects, covering them in spores to spread out. The glow is caused by an enzyme called luciferase, the same as fireflies. Imagine the wonder of the first person to discover a glowing green cluster in a forest, and unlike a radioactive isotope, they could still return home. And the last fact that caught my eye was that a fungi is the largest organism in the world. Measured by area, this honey mushroom has a fitting name of the humongous fungus. It covers an area of 10 square kilometers or 4 freedom miles. The most common mushrooms in my area are the brown star, white coral fungus, which I struggle to tell apart from the antler mushroom, and split gill mushrooms. And lastly, moss, which without a doubt is my favorite of the three. The lushness, coolness, and tranquil nature draws me in. Same as lichen, it mainly lives off nutrients in the air. The hair-like roots are only for adhering itself to surfaces. Moss is similar to most plants, however it lacks the ability to transport water. Instead, it relies on capillary action akin to a living sponge. This is what allows the moss to hold a fair amount of water, but it prevents it from growing too tall. From the outside, most mosses will look similar to small green clumps, but under a closer inspection they differ completely, from towering pines to drooping ferns. I'm always envious of northern forests that are entirely covered in moss. The first place that comes to mind is Scotland. Some of these forests, they just seem plucked straight out of a fantasy book. It's amazing. The overgrown aesthetic is my favorite garden, old mossy statues and ivy-covered stone walls. However, I understand that some people dislike ivy grown on walls in fear of damaging their house. I myself have many species of creepers on my walls, but that's the beauty of moss. It does little to no damage to bricks or stone. Better yet, it acts as a natural insulator, keeping rooms cooler in the summer and warm in the winter. Some companies are experimenting with the idea of spray-on moss walls, where they mix a natural plaster with moss spores, allowing entire buildings to be covered in moss. All in all, moss is a fantastic plant and I could spend all day looking at pictures of it. Some people have cat photos, I'll have moss photos. Now, key anchor points for each. Lichen is similar to drawing bark or paper. It has small lips peeling off the ends. It also has an asymmetrical leaf structure. Its colors blend and bleed into one another. Its texture is dry and almost flaky. Mushrooms with caps will have gills underneath. Stems will normally have a slightly swollen base with a thin skirt wrapping around it. Their texture is slimy and oily with vibrant colors and patterns. For moss, it's all about the leaf structure and finding the balance between too much detail and not enough. Let's give drawing them a try. Onto my own plants. I wanted to stick to the same style as my fantasy flowers, simple colors with weighted lines. Unfortunately for me, I've got plenty of books on flowers, trees and bonsai, but none on mushrooms, so no free and easy reference for me. But after some time scouring through the dumpster pile of AI art infested Pinterest and Chrome, I've got myself a solid reference board. My first mushroom was heavily based on the bridal mushroom. It's such an awesome looking fungi that I didn't really want to change anything about it. Instead, I kept the changes subtle and accentuated the pre-existing fantasy elements. For lichen, I wanted to be a bit crazy concept involving a multi-stage life cycle. It's a bit whimsical, but still has believability to it. For the moss, I played it safe and still struggled with the middle distance detail. I know what the leaves look like up close, and from afar it's just a green blob, but that in between is tricky to draw in a simple cartoon style. After adding some brief descriptions, they were finished. Nature's vase. This peculiar lichen has a multi-stage lifespan. It starts as a seed perched on a rock or branch. It traps water in a transparent pouch. This pouch reflects and bounces light around. The refraction of light allows the lichen to absorb light from both directions, as well as absorbing the most beneficial wavelengths. When the pouch inevitably grows too big, it will fall, soaking and spreading out its leaves. Here, the lichen will remain for the rest of its lifespan. When mature, the nature's vase will sprout a small, delicate purple flower, which after pollination sends out seeds to begin the cycle anew. Although not nutritious, the leaves are edible and bland. Only found in short lengths, the pouch stem is an incredibly strong natural vine. When processed correctly, the threads can be produced are as valuable as useful, known for its strength, lightweight, and durability. Death's doormat, also known as ghost carpet. This intriguing moss sprouts stems that capture water droplets. Once the water has been contained, the stem slowly releases bioluminescent algae into the droplet. During the day, this provides extra moisture and protection to dry spurs. At night, the glow from the bioluminescence attracts bugs. The primary purpose is to cover them with spores in hopes of spreading the species out. However, its secondary purpose is consuming smaller bugs. The surface tension of the water droplets will trap anything too small, slowly suffocating it. The bug's remains will break down and dissolve, eventually becoming fertilizer for the algae and moss alike. This predatory nature and faint spectral glow at night is how the moss was gifted the name Death's Doormat. Veiled Lady. This regal mushroom is truly a sight to see. Its main stem is covered in delicate red polypores. These shelf mushrooms house all the spores. They are edible, and when dried and crushed they make a deep red dye. However, they are incredibly delicate and susceptible to pests. To protect itself, the veiled lady produces a thin white mesh starting from its head. This veil is lined with a clear toxic mucus. Though it is not able to fatally harm a person, it will cause numbness, rashness, and mild stinging sensation, which is more than enough to deter predators. The mucus also helps to catch and prevent dust and other debris from damaging its center. It's only known to grow under dense tree cover, particularly in coniferous forests, with minimal to no shrubbery. I'm quite happy with the outcome. They match my old flowers nicely. My favorite has to be the lichen. I really like the veiled lady as well. However, I took the majority of the design from reality, so I can't claim the idea to be my own. But after that, I needed a change of pace and decided to add some plants to a semi-realism, high-rendered artwork. My idea for this piece was an old throne with moss or ivy on it. I have not painted plants for a long time and didn't want to overwhelm myself, so I merely added them as an accent. I settled on a white flower, taking inspiration from the petal shape from a star jasmine. And after some back-breaking rendering, it was time to call this piece done. The blood in the background was a challenge, so I ended up blurring out most of it. Plants are very saturated, so I struggled to get the color and index of refraction correct. My favorite part of the painting has to be the red jewel. The perspective was a bit tricky, but I love how the reflections and refractions look. All in all, there are definitely some weak spots in this piece, but I love the overall mood, and the style consistency between it and my previous piece are matching nicely. And to avoid dragging on or waffling this video on any longer, I'll end it here. What species of plants would you add next? Or perhaps I should try something a bit more daring, such as fantasy creatures. Some interesting ideas to play around with for next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Create the world you want to see.